Yeah.
I get that a lot. And then and the worst is when people are like, "Oh, I didn't know she was gay." And you're like, if I cut my hair short, maybe they would have known. Like, God, like, it's...
I also feel like it's there's a competition component that's just like, that's super just like, oh, this is my competition. We can't be attracted to each other because we're against each other because we're trying to get this butch-looking person to get with us. Or like, oh, she's super hot and therefore it's a threat, instead of like a I just like to look at you type of thing, like, or I just want to fuck you type of thing.
Like, that's really true.
Just like, I feel like that can't necessarily. I don't know. I also feel like in terms of like hair as a component to feminist, that like brings in another thing, because like I like people with really short hair who like are femme or butch or whatever, and I feel like that like hair as a marker for queerness also like can become a marker for feminists in a certain way, like how like, so like I have this like short whatever versus like a long poofiness, so like this haircut makes me look more queer than the one I had before, and like how that also influences like how femmes see each other, and like validation, like who is more femme or who is more queer.
I feel like dudes hit on me a lot more when I had my taper cut. Which is, I mean, like for a while I was rocking a really, really, really short, just like tapered in the back, like edged up. Like I only got it cut by barbers, you know, like, but dudes were like on it for that couple of minutes. And like now that I'm growing my hair out again, I'm at that awkward length where it's just like, I just don't feel cute. But I also think that it's interesting that like femmes don't make that leap from being like, oh, I know she's so hot, I bet she's competition, to, oh, she's so hot and I want to have sex with her. Like that seems odd to me, you know? Like,
right, especially because you're both all of each other's business anyway.
It's
like,
true.
Not like you don't see each other looking at each other.
Exactly. I got to do a lot of looking to feel like you're competition.
You know, you're already looking anyways.
Exactly. You know, look at her, all her hair, all that makeup on. Like, I don't see why it's not like,
a whole outline. Like,
exactly.
So...
You know, it's like, but like, why would that make me feel like you were a competition, or instead of like I was competing for you? Like, I don't even know like what that means.
I just think there's still so much acrimony like between women identified folks, just like as a general, like across like all of everything. I just think it's like still a really, really big part of like little forces that encourage us to self-destruct.
Yeah.
But there are two things that I was thinking of. One was that, you know, I wish, I can't speak to it, but I wish that somebody was here to speak to, or if somebody maybe wants to speak to, you know, notions of like male femininity and like being male femme identified, or however you want to phrase that, but maybe not being woman identified, but identifying as femme. And then the other thing that I want to talk about is kind of like the intersection of like class and sex work, and like somebody like that not being gay, because like you definitely mentioned, right, get to it, because you mentioned, you know, what did you say, two femmes like being about catching attention and being about like feeding into some type of either, you know, fantasy, and like specifically like a male fantasy, but I also think that then, you know, there's this other aspect of it, which is like, I don't know if anybody else has been to the strip club, but I've been to the strip club and I've had a lot of different experiences with women dancing for me, or women whose attention I was trying to get, women who've been like, get the fuck off of me, you know. But it's very interesting because, you know, just thinking about something that doesn't have to do with my own identity or anybody else that I know, like ladies on the stage who, you know, are definitely paid to perform, but then also may have like a preferred, you know, lifestyle, and may very well like only be sleeping with, you know, other like female-bodied folks, or, you know, some other spectrum of that. So then thinking like, because folks not only, you know, might do that in their spare time, but also get paid to be sexy, and also like paid to be sexy with women, then there's no way that, you know, they can actually like hold that identity as something that's real, or like that, you know, somehow because like somebody might be engaged in like paid work, or like paid like sexuality based sex work, you know, whatever, sex acts, like all of that shit, that somehow then they don't have a sexual identity because they just fucking get paid, so they just fuck. You know, I think it's a lot more complicated than that, but I think that a lot of the times, you know, what type of like material exchange is going on for sex kind of like affects that like validity of like who has what identity, and like what we're, you know, reading people as such. So and I also think that, you know, in terms of like the ways that people present as femme, like I know I love to wear some high heels, but then it's like I can't be a femme and wear high heels because then I'm a hooker, but what if I'm a fucking hooker and a femme and
Amen.
high heels, you know? And then what happens then? So I think it just, you know, speaks to the ways that we, again, you know, I don't know, because it's also, I mean, I understand like wanting to hold on to like notions of like some community that isn't hetero, but I also think that like a lot of people have sex with a lot of different people for a lot of different reasons, like across different periods of time. So, yeah.
Damn, Sarah Sykes. I think like my experience also as like a disabled femme, like it's weird because like as we'll talk about in the very next episode, sex and disability, you know, like people who are disabled are assumed to be asexual, like in a lot of ways. Like they're assumed to not be able to have sex, not be good lovers, you know, like not do X, Y, and Z in bed, you know? And like, yeah, I have physical limits, but I get down, you know, like I gets down. So, and I feel like as a femme, like who is disabled, like heels are the things I resent most, you know, like that like compulsion towards heels. Like I wore heels last night and my feet are, I don't know why I did that. And like, but like on the like the tip of like of sex work, like I feel like that was the ableism that like I experienced like while, like I associate wearing high heels with like the times in my life where I've had to exchange sex for money. But also like the many more times when I've had to exchange sex for other things, like a place to stay, or you know, food, silence, you know, like for privacy, like exchanging sex for like my own personal privacy, and like the sort of like femininity I had to engage in those spaces is like different than I think than my femme identity, you know, like that was very much me being feminine, like more than it was me being a femme. Yeah, but we'll say more about that in the upcoming episode, Queer Sex and Sex Work. So there we go. Yes. Yes, so we're at the end of our show.
For questions, comments, complaints, or concerns, email me at getwettv@gmail.com. That's GTWET TV@gmail.com. Do it.